Join me a warm round of applause for Andrew Schneider.
Thank you, Nathan. Just want to start off by just giving a tremendous thanks to Nathan and his whole staff. They've been absolutely phenomenal to work with in every capacity. And I really just want to give a warm and thank you to, again, Nathan and his whole staff. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Andrew Schneider. I'm the founder and the CEO of Family Office Networks. My goal here is to kind of give you more better understanding of what family offices are and what impact they're having on our society and how we work with families and what we do. Some of the presentation that Nathan went over with was very good. In fact, we've seen, according to a recent Ernst & Young study, the number of family offices has gone up tenfold in the last 10 years. That's tenfold. And on a global basis, that's even much, much larger. The time it takes to build the wealth, years ago, it would take many years. You would start a business, you would reinvest back in it, you'd build a business, and it could take 20, 30, 40, 50 years to build up the type of wealth that literally people are creating in under a year with the social media, with all these new technologies. And so we're seeing wealth created much faster, much quicker, which is creating a lot of opportunities. And family offices, in my opinion, and they called a disruptive force. I think it was about 2 or 3 years ago, the front page of the Wall Street Journal had family offices are the new investment banks on Wall Street. And basically that's what's happening. You're seeing a lot of family offices take the roles of a lot of traditionally what investment banks would look at. Family offices now are being the active leaders in allocating to both banking deals and other investments. What I'd like to do is just take a step back and just give you a quick background about myself and about my company, and then we'll go into more about the family office industry. And I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that anyone may have. My background is I'm from New York. Do we have any other New Yorkers here? Got one? Okay, two, okay. Not bad. Great, okay. From New York, I came out of Morgan Stanley. About 20 or so years ago, I founded a company called HedgeCo, or hedgeco.net. Basically, I created the largest hedge fund website database in the world, where on one side, I allowed hedge funds to list their funds on my site for free. So they would list their strategy, they would list their bios, they would list their monthly performance numbers, and every month they would update their performance numbers. On the other side, it was free for accredited investors to go on. They would fill out a long questionnaire that I designed, asking everything from net worth, liquid net worth, how many investments have you made in the last 12 months, average size investment, and another 15 to 20 more questions. Then they would sign off on an accreditation form. And then I would personally call them, just to introduce myself, but more importantly, to find out what they were interested in. And as I would talk to them, not only would I find out what they were interested in, but more importantly, I would get permission from them to be able to go back and introduce different products and services based on specifically what their objectives and goals were. I would say that 98% were extremely receptive. In fact, would say, Andrew, we're looking for only real estate products, or we're looking for only funds that have over 100 million plus. I got very lucky when I started this, 2001, 02, the market really crashed. All of a sudden, hedge funds, which no one was familiar with, became in vogue. And I was really at the right place, the right time. At the peak, I had over 7,000 funds that were listed on the site, both domestic and global. And we had about 24,000 accredited investors that came to us unsolicited. the demographics of the investors, about 70% were high net worth and family offices. That's always been our kind of, our bread and butter, meat, potatoes type of business. It's the sticky money, it's the relationship money, and more importantly, that's where the referrals come from. So we had about 30% institutions, and we had all the pension funds, endowments, foundations, private banks, insurance companies, etc. We're about 65% domestic, 35% global, and again, we're very fortunate. We built this very, very robust distribution platform at the time for hedge fund products. I sold my company, or my interest in my company, about 8 years ago, and started my own family office. Now, this is just 7, 8 years ago. Well, I've been dealing with family offices for over 20 years, but most people, I was in this room, never heard of a family office until maybe a few years ago. 6, 7 years ago, when I started my own family office, it was really about sharing ideas and co-investing. That's what it was always about. Looking at I live in Palm Beach, and I've been there for 17 years. And so I know most of the family offices in the Palm Beach area for just being there for so many years. And it's a very cliquish type of environment. And if you can get one family to invest with, there's a good chance you're going to get their friends and their other family members. So Palm Beach, I've been very fortunate that I've had such a good network of relationships. So we started getting together, maybe it was on a bi-weekly or monthly basis, again, really just sharing ideas. They wanted to hear what we were looking at, I wanted to hear what they were looking at, and then the conversation started covering other topics. Anything from philanthropy to estate planning to different wealth management strategies. And that's when I just saw how fragmented the industry is. And literally, I think it was about 5 years ago, I Googled family offices. And it is roughly estimated to be about a $12 trillion industry. I think there was maybe 2 or 3 websites total on a $12 trillion industry. And I'm like, what is the big disconnect between groups that are trying to get access to families and other families that are trying to get access to other family offices? Why is there such a disconnect? And obviously, most family offices are very reclusive, and in some cases exclusive. So I decided to form family office networks, and the goal was to bring family offices together, to share ideas, again, to co-invest, to meet other like-minded individuals. And what I did initially was very educational. We did a lot of events kind of educating families about different practices, whether it was different investment opportunities, deal flow, but then we would cover everything from succession planning, corporate governance, to estate planning, and again, just other wealth management strategies. When I started Family Office Networks, I also started the Palm Beach Family Office Association. Again, being in Palm Beach for 17 years, I've been doing events there for many, many years. And I started doing events just for family offices in the Palm Beach area. And my first event was probably a little over 5 years ago in Palm Beach. It was at Angela Koch's house. She's the ex-wife of Bill Koch, the billionaires on Palm Beach Island. And I was sharing with her just about family office networks and about the Palm Beach Family Office Association. She said, what a great idea. She's like, why don't you do it at my place? Fantastic. So I had the first event at her place, about 5 years ago. About 75 people show up, about 65 family offices or so. And as I'm walking around the room thanking everyone for coming, I noticed something different from all the other events I've done. Normally when an event starts, people are in different corners, and then after a few drinks, people start mingling. When I'm walking around the room, I noticed a lot of people were talking to each other. I'm like, how does everyone know each other? And I started overhearing some of the conversations, and their kids going to the same private schools or prep schools. They were members of the same church or synagogue or or even country club. The other thing that really kind of got the light bulb going here was they were talking about local issues, whether it was investment or non-investment. They were talking about local Palm Beach issues. And that's when I said, this is very scalable, but I need to do this in other areas. So I launched the New York City Family Office Association, being from New York. Again, the goal was to do these very high-end events, and we target our niche is the $50 to $500 million families. That's our sweet spot. I don't care so much about the billion-dollar families, as everyone is trying to go after them. The $50 to $500 million family, that's the sweet spot. Those are the guys writing the checks. Those are the guys that are allocating to deals. New York City, basically, again, we do these very high-end events. We do lunches, we do events at all different types of venues, and it just took off. We launched eventually the Boston Family Office Association, the Connecticut, Miami, Naples, Chicago, San Diego, Los Angeles, Silicon Valley, Seattle, run by Nathan. We're in 31 locations altogether. Each one of these we have someone, we'll say with boots on the ground, where we're doing very high-end events, bringing family offices together. The reason the families come is they want to meet other families in the area, whether they're new to the area or there's families that are new to the area, they want to learn about what other families are around. And again, it's about access to deals. You know, when I started this, talking to most of the family offices, they asked me, hey, where is your assets? Where is your money? And a lot of them would say, it's at Merrill Lynch or it's at Morgan Stanley. And do they show you any deals, you know, outside of what's approved by Morgan or Merrill? And the answer is no. So a lot of these guys, or these families, want access to better deals, and they're just not being shown it. So what I did was I launched these different associations all around the country, and we do these, we'll say, very high-end events. We did about 200 events last year throughout the country, and it's been really amazing just traveling from city to city, meeting all the different family offices, and you know, family offices in Seattle are certainly much different than family offices in Palm Beach versus family offices in London versus ones in Australia. And our goal is we'll continue launching new associations so that we're in every city, and we target the local families that make up the wealth of those cities. And that's basically what we do at Family Office Networks. We, about 2 years ago, I made a really big push into luxury. Luxury is a natural overlap in a lot of what we do. You know what I mean? Luxury, private aviation, yachts, art, different collectibles, classic cars, jewelry, philanthropy. Family offices are the largest consumers of luxury products. 1/3 of jet owners have over a $500 million net worth. And I was reading an article, I think on the plane ride here, about some of these private jet companies that are ripping off their members, and there's a whole kind of investigation going on. But that's really where a family office comes in and can help by having the infrastructure that a family has versus families that don't have the infrastructure and will have issues or problems like that. So luxury, again, is just a natural fit to what we do. A lot of times we can't get in the front door with a format like this, or a luncheon speaking about a specific investment program. So we do events at art galleries, we do events at different venues. For example, I do polo every Sunday. We have a big tent, and we have, we invite the families, and they bring their spouses, their kids, and really it gives us access to families that we could not get otherwise. So again, I can't express by combining the luxury has been just a great kind of growth factor for us. In the last few years, as I mentioned before, the number of family offices has gone up tenfold. And there is a huge demand in education out there.
and learning about what services are available for family offices, how to start a family office. Do you need a family office? What constitutes a family office? And there is no exact legal definition. The understanding is it's a family with 100 million or more. Now, is that liquid or non-liquid? It depends on who you ask. The other thing Nathan touched upon is multifamily offices, and I do want to just touch upon that as well. As you've seen family offices and the family office industry grow, so has multifamily offices. Now, what is a multifamily office? It's a very, very broad term, and I've seen it used in many different ways. A multifamily office, when I think of multifamily office, you think of a single family office that manages money for other single family offices. A good example is the Rockefeller family office. They have 250 family office clients that they manage money for. So, multifamily offices are sometimes set up as an advisory firm, sometimes they're not, but they're managing their own money as well as for other single family offices. Then on the other side of the spectrum, you have these accounting firms calling themselves multifamily offices that do everything but manage money. They pay your bills, they help with the taxes, they'll walk your dog, they'll help you with setting up a foundation, and they'll basically help handle everything, and almost as a personal concierge service, but they don't do any investment advisory. And then what I call are kind of the hybrids, which you're seeing a lot of firms that now do both. They offer the investment advisory services, and where they charge a fee on that, and they pretty much give away the other services, from the bill pay to the dog walking, as a way to get access to the assets. So again, multifamily office, it's a term that's been very, very misused over the years.
Andrew, maybe just take a minute and kind of walk us through, once you had a chance to sell Hedgeco and you decide, okay, I'm going to set up my own family office. Maybe just kind of walk us through 5 minutes. How did that little personal journey go for you? Obviously, you learned a lot about family offices. What was important to you to make sure you incorporated into your own family office, the mission, the values, and how did that set the foundation then for kind of where you are today?
Sure. I think mine is pretty simple. I've got several family members that are included in my family office. I have an identical twin brother. I always like to say good-looking guy. So between his company, we've got a lot of family business in Northern California. We decided to put all of our our resources together so that we'd be able to vet deals better. Really, it was more about also putting us all on the same page. You've got different family members all doing different things. It was really about organizing kind of the immediate family, and my family is involved in a lot of different industries, from software and travel to electric cars and bikes, to my business, which is mostly the family office. So it's very diverse industries, and again, what we did was we pulled our resources together so that we would be able to go out there and co-invest with other families to be able to get access to their deal flow as well as show them our deal flow. And it's been a really good experience, kind of just from doing it on my end. I can relate to a lot of other families that I meet with, and we kind of go through their structure, how they're set up, what issues are important to them, and there are no two family offices that are alike, and that's that's a fact. I mean, typically when I meet with families, the more siblings they have, the more problems, and usually it works out better for us because they need our services. but I've sat at many of the tables where I would sit on one end and the daughter would sit across from me because she doesn't talk to the mother at the other end. The mother won't talk to the brother who's sitting next to me, and the father who's not talking to this one. And that sounds like some of our families, but when you add in hundreds of millions of dollars, the problems don't go away. They get bigger. And the bigger they get, the more need for an infrastructure. And that's really what, one of the biggest issues with families. Yeah, a good case I like to look at is Stroh's beer. Anyone familiar with Stroh's beer? They drank it in college. So Stroh's beer, not the best, but I think it's a German beer, and it was the grandparents that started it and turned it into like a $8 or $9 billion company, left it to the children. By the time the grandchildren got it, it was bankrupt. Now, how do you bankrupt a $9 billion beer company? And this is, one of the big issues that a lot of families deal with. Do we hand our business over to the next generation, to our kids and their kids, or do you have a third party come in and help out? And again, there is no right or wrong answer, but at least by showing families examples that if you don't prepare in advance, you could not only lose the money, well, the government's going to take it through taxes, and if you don't prepare properly, it's there's so many different examples of whether it's athletes or movies that get large dollar amounts and then just years later they're bankrupt. I mean, it's there's a you see that again a lot, certainly a lot in sports, and so again, one of the goals of adding the infrastructure is to help avoid catastrophes like that. So with family office networks, when I started it, again, the goal was to get out there to meet with a lot of single family offices, to find out what they were interested in. And again, then getting permission from them to be able to go back and introduce different products and services. Now, when I initially started Family Office Networks, my background is in the hedge fund space. So I started introducing hedge fund products. The problem is nobody wanted a hedge fund. In the last 7, 8, 9 years or so, we've had a pretty up market with very little volatility. For the most part, a hedge fund thrives in a down market with volatility, hence the name hedge. So hedge funds are just not an easy product to raise new money for. Where we're seeing a lot of families allocate to is on the real estate side and on the private equity and more investment banking. That's where we're seeing the most activity. On the real estate side, pretty much every type of real estate out there. Most families, their largest holding is real estate. So some of them want to invest to diversify, others know the space and want to stick to real estate. Right now, we probably see the biggest demand for any type of yield play. That's where we're raising the largest dollar amounts. And when I say yield play, with interest rates at historic lows, there's CDs that are paying almost nothing, interest rate, banks are paying almost nothing. So there's families looking for alternatives where they can get income. And so we're seeing a lot of issuers create products that are generating income, whether it's a real estate product or if it's a asset-based lending or a hard money loan, something to generate yield. That by far is where the larger dollar amounts are going. On the private equity side, we've seen a lot in the biotech, the cannabis space, blockchain, technology in general, are all very hot areas for family offices. Basically, the way we work with different companies is they retain us, and what we do is kind of road shows for them. So, for example, if we had a biotech company from
so let's say San Diego, hire us. The reason they hire us is they want to be put in front of family offices that have expressed interest in what they're doing. And they don't want to have to travel around taking unnecessary meetings for people that are just not qualified. When I say not qualified, there's two meanings there. One is that they're just not receptive or do not like the idea. And number two is they're not liquid. Either or, they're not qualified. So what we do is we get retained by different issuers where we set up these luncheons throughout the country, these road shows, we set up individual meetings, we put them in front of qualified families that have expressed an interest. In the last 3-4 years since I've been doing this, I could probably point to 35, 40 companies that have been funded through our network. And it's not rocket science what we're doing here. We're just basically taking all of our network, which has been really a grassroots approach. When you think about how many events we've done throughout the country and all the personal just handshakes and relationships that we built. And the next part for us is we're launching a technology platform, because at any given time, we're marketing 15 to 20 products at once, but we really could be marketing 200 or 2,000. We certainly have the distribution. So we're going to be looking at different technology platforms. So companies that have been retaining us have been very fortunate because we have a great distribution and it continues to grow over and over. We're always out there constantly meeting new investors and new families. And I can't tell you how important that is. The other groups that we work with are luxury companies that want to advertise on our sites. We have a weekly newsletter that comes out just on family offices, and then we also have a weekly newsletter that comes out just on luxury. Any of you can sign up, it's free, just go to familyofficenetworks.com and you can sign up for our newsletter.
All right. We can do some questions as well here, Andrew, if you'd like. So just quickly, round of applause here for Andrew. Let's kind of wake everybody up. That's a lot to keep track of and to manage and to grow. And so our hats off to you to be able to kind of build that kind of a channel. We're excited to have more of our companies be able to participate and get access to those investors. But we've got about 15 minutes or so here, so we can take some questions from the audience for Andrew. If anybody has any questions about family offices, setting up a family office, about negotiating with family offices, finding them, we're happy to take any questions. Just raise your hand, and Max has a microphone along with Maggie will have one as well, so we can try and get as many questions as we can here. Go ahead, just a quick little intro on yourself, your name, and a good question.
My name is Chris Allison. I'm kind of fell into seed investing way back in 2010 with a friend in New York who started Teriyaki Quick Service. But anyway, so you alluded to that a little bit of the lows of negotiating, talking with families. Could you elaborate on that a little bit more? And I'm also curious about your foot or your ankle.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand the question here. You want to know about the lows of?
Yeah, kind of the lows. You have highs, lows in the future of the family office network. So,
for my company, again, we've been very fortunate that the family office industry has taken off, where almost everyone is trying to get access to family offices. So we've been very fortunate that, again, just been at the right place, the right time. Where we could improve is the technology in our infrastructure. Most groups like us have the infrastructure but don't have any distribution. I did it the opposite way. We're in the process of acquiring a broker-dealer, which is so we can get the placement or the success fees, and that's what this business is about. But what I chose to do, instead of starting a broker-dealer, acquiring a broker-dealer, first you build out the distribution, then you get the broker-dealer. Because owning a broker-dealer with no distribution is just it's like a money pit. And it's very tough to get ahead.
And your foot?
And my foot. So I was golfing on Sunday. I was driving the cart. My colleague was sitting next to me. He was grabbing a ball with like a mile an hour, and the golf cart tipped as he tipped over literally in slow motion. Talk about a surreal experience. Like, I mean, literally, it must have felt like forever. It was just tipping and tipping, and it landed right on my foot. So I broke metatarsal or metatarsal. Is any doctors here? So. Is there any other questions?
Yeah, other questions? I would say one of the, in terms of low points, I'd say we work with a lot of people, and so we kind of live through what they're living through as well in terms of their ups, their downs, their health, their husbands, wives, spouses having health challenges. I mean, it's always something we're very cognizant of, and if, we love the people, but at the same time, we're dealing with a lot of people, and there can be some boneheads out there that you got to watch out for. And then a lot of times you got great people you love, and then they have tough things that happen to them.
Let me just say one more thing, Chris. Sorry. There was a low point that I should have mentioned earlier. About 13 years ago, I had heart failure. I lost 90% of my heart. I was put on a heart transplant list. I had a virus that attacked my heart. My heart dilated to twice the size of a normal heart. I was in my early 30s and relatively a healthy lifestyle. In a enlarged heart, normal heart beats like this. My heart was beating like that, so no blood was going to the bottom half of my body. I had a defibrillator that was put in me, and this was in 2006, and I was given about 3 months to live. I was told to get my affairs in order, and fortunately, with my relationships, I was able to meet with, I think, 11 or 12 of some of the best cardiologists in the world. That I flew in from all over, paid for their flight, their consultation, but I really just wanted a second, third, fourth, fifth opinion, and pretty much they all said the same thing, that I need a heart transplant immediately, and there is no cure for what I had. Here I am 13 years later, no heart transplant. I went an unconventional way, which this is vitamins. I take about 150 vitamins a day, but I don't take vitamins like the average person. I get tested for the exact dosage my body needs. And everyone thought I was absolutely crazy, and they thought I went on the deep end. But sure enough, I was in a wheelchair. I said I got one leg to stand on. And that was the only other time I was in a wheelchair. But after a few months, I was able to get out of the wheelchair, and in another few months, I was able to start walking. In a year and a half, I cured myself 100%. Then I became the first person ever to have a defibrillator removed from your body. Yeah. So
Wow.
That was a low point.
Wow. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, here we go.
Sorry.
Yeah, Chuck McDonald, I'm from Chicago. I'm sorry to ask a negative question after that great story. A few years ago, I went to an SEC conference on compliance, and one of the questions I was asking people is, where are you seeing fraud currently? These are people who are kind of in the know. And they talked about, for example, people selling gold that don't have the gold to back up what they're selling, and they're going to see more exposure there. Given your broad exposure, where do you see more opportunities for fraud protection?
Great question. And this is a topic that we do cover a lot. Everyone heard the question, right? Where do we see potential fraud? Certainly, I know that FINRA and the regulators are looking very closely at blockchain. That's something that is still very new. It's emerging, traditionally, when you have a fund, for the most part, when you have a fund, whether it's a real estate fund, a private equity fund, a hedge fund, there's what I call our 4 pillars of your infrastructure. Typically is your legal, the lawyer who did the offering docs, your fund administrator, that does your day-to-day, month-to-month accounting, your auditor does your year-end audit, and then the prime broker and/or custodian, where are the assets held or which bank are you using? You know, if you're, for some reason, are missing one of those pillars, or if you tell me your auditor is a two-person shop out of Orlando, and you're managing a few $100 million, that's a red flag. That's what Bernie Madoff had. Except he was billions of dollars with a two-man accounting firm. If you do not use a fund administrator, and this is by far the most important thing, if you can take one point that I'm making today, please take this one. If you are looking at a fund and they do not have an administrator, that is a major red flag. Every bit of fraud ever that I've ever seen in 20 years have always been funds that are self-administered. And what does that mean? If it's self-administered, that means the fund manager is sending statements directly to their investors. So if they're sending statements directly, they could play around with the numbers, they could smudge them, and we've seen it happen many, many times. If there's a third-party administrator, then it's a third party that's sending out the statements. They're the ones that are computing the net asset value. And if they're not using a third-party administrator, that by far is the biggest red flag.
But risk management, security, all these different things that family offices deal with all the time. A lot of the content at a lot of the conferences we go to is all about family offices dealing with a lot of these risk management issues. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Enjoyed your presentation. You mentioned the intersection with the luxury market, and I was wondering if any of that activity at the MFO level is joint ownership of recreational type assets, yachts, islands, whatever. I mean, is that part of having an active asset in your investments, not just passive?
I mean, absolutely. It's again, for us, it was another way, or another avenue to get access to families that would not normally come to an event like this. And so we started really, pushing the luxury, again, both products and services. And from there, it's opened so many doors that I couldn't imagine how else we would have, gotten or started a relationship with somebody's underlying families. Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
I'm Robert. I'm a blockchain fund in Seattle. I was curious to hear about some of the services that you think, maybe looking forward, family offices might absorb, whereas we've seen hedge funds, they've sort of taken on those roles. Nathan spoke about investment banks. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm just going to make sure I understand.
Kind of financial services things that are currently that family offices might take on and run internally,
Yeah, exactly.
having their own managers, and all the way to the point having their own managers. Or
You've seen, probably, I think 30 or so different hedge funds turn into family offices for a variety of different reasons. I'm not exactly sure what other, again, it depends on the family, what industry they're in, if they're going to be actively involved in the investment process, or if they're going to be involved in whatever, if there's due diligence involved. Again, it really depends on the product and the underlying family.
Yeah, ideally, internally, their core, they got something they're very good at and have contacts or expertise that they're really good at around direct investing. And then they outsource to others that have the expertise in terms of what they have themselves. Question?
Yeah, Scott Thielman, and I run a company here in town that does product development, so a lot of my clients are looking for, well, the early stage clients are looking for ways to get money, and it feels to me like, I'm actually enjoying your talk, this whole event, but it's felt to me like the family offices were kind of dumb money a little bit, no offense, but is there a diligence problem? Is there a screening problem with the family offices where they're not getting the best information, or they're not being rigorous around making those choices, or is that kind of part of what you're
Well, we're kind of bridging the gap and making the whole process easier. The point of introducing family offices to other families was to share the cost of due diligence, to share other costs that are involved in vetting at deals. I mean, there's nothing more important than due diligence. And What I like about family offices is a lot of the deals that we work with, and our niche has been working with family offices that have their own products, and they're looking for other families to co-invest with. They're not looking to hire me to go out and get 100 investors for them. You know, we have a group that's looking, for example, a real estate group that's looking to raise $100 million. They hired us because they only want 8 to 10 other families to co-invest with. They're not looking for more than that. That's our sweet spot. But that type of due diligence now, if it can be split 8 to 10 ways, it makes it easier for everyone. And that's what we're seeing, and I'm seeing certainly throughout the country, different pockets of families are collaborating with each other to do the due diligence and other necessary qualifying and factors.
Good follow-on question though, because Scott works with a lot of early stage things, product concepts, ideas, which are always tough to fund until there's really that product market fit. So families, some do like the research and the philanthropy and really funding originated research within universities and benefactors in that regard, whether it's a healthcare type mission or some kind of impact thing. But then when it comes to investing in companies, you know, the early stage versus the later stage, mid stage, I mean, where are you seeing the families evolve? Where's kind of the sweet spot? Where does a company need to be to really want to be looked at broadly by family offices? What kind of valuation, what kind of amount of funding do they need to be raising? Where do they need to be in their product market fit cycle?
So, for a family office, typically, we look at least our sweet spot is that $10 to $100 million raise. Anyone that's looking for, $1 million, $2 million, we're not really a good fit for. Because the amount of due diligence, the cost that goes into that, the typical rebuttal from any family that we would show that to is, why aren't they putting their own money into it? And that would be the biggest, uphill kind of battle that you would face. Our sweet spot, again, 50 million up to 100 million, where the economics make sense, meaning the economics on our end make sense, where the fees will warrant the risk that's associated with marketing or taking on a new product.
Time for a few more questions. Who's got the mic?
Is it Allison?
Eileen.
Eileen, sorry.
Hi.
Right behind you there, Eileen, there's a mic from Daniel.
Hi, Eileen Cowles with TriNet. Appreciate your time here today and hope your foot gets better. I'm curious to understand a little bit more about how, Family Office Network is fairly new in Seattle, right? Just came August last year, I believe, or something, right?
We launched in November.
Yeah, November, okay. So curious just to hear specifically in the Seattle market, how has that growth been and what are some maybe challenges that are specific to Seattle versus, maybe what you haven't seen in Palm Beach or in Boston and other areas?
So this is only my second time in Seattle. I've traveled around the country. I was really very impressed with just my last trip here. Where I am, for example, in Palm Beach, almost everyone is a transplant. We're all from New York, Connecticut, New Jersey. For the most of the families I met here have roots here. They went to, Washington University.
Lakeside, University of Washington.
And they've got deeper roots. I worked with a gentleman, Dan Einhorn, who some of you may know. His brother David Einhorn's an $8 or $9 billion hedge fund. And his strategy, it was a private equity fund, but they only invested in companies in 4 states. It was Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Michigan. And the point was that not enough investors are going out or up here to the Northwest to see what opportunities are here. And I didn't believe that in this day and age, you would think that's, how true could that be? And I was very pleasantly surprised when I came here, how many groups were looking for access to good deals, access to good products, access to just other introductions. What I noticed here is that, they don't have the infrastructure that we have in Palm Beach or New York, and I think this is going to be one of our fastest growing markets. I really like it, love the people, and you guys will.
Thank you.
One final question back here.
All right.
Andrew, you probably get hazardous duty pay for playing golf, but I'm curious in the other area of hazardous duty, how are family office managers helping their clients or themselves manage the risk of investing in early stage ventures?
A few ways. One is by doing it through funds versus individual deals. This diversifies, offers diversification, and we're seeing a lot more interest in, we'll say, VC funds than some of these direct deals because they just don't have time to go out and do the due diligence that's required. So one way is through a fund structure with the diversification. And the other is, I also have a recruitment firm, family office search.com. And the reason I set that up was we would get approached by family offices that were looking for a new CFO or a new CIO. And so we started the search to be able to help families staff up with the right people. And that's helping with the due diligence and other parts of them vetting deals and so on and so forth.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Andrew, for making the long flight out here. We're excited to have you the next couple days. We're excited to have launched the Seattle Family Office Association, and we are open. We're looking for folks who want to be part of our founding group of families here to help put Seattle on the map and be able to syndicate and bring deal flow here and send deal flow out and all the great things, West Coast, East Coast, with New York, Palm Beach, with LA, San Francisco, Seattle, Vancouver. Just so much potential there for us. So very excited. So thank you very much, Andrew, for
Yes,
coming out.
thank you.
Round of applause.